Hey, it's Molly. Welcome back to my channel as we are moving through a series here around the descendant, understanding the energies of the descendant, how to interpret it more accurately in your own chart, what it means, what to consider, and what to look at. So in this video, we're going to look at the Taurus descendant, and you would have a Taurus descendant if you have Scorpio as your ascendant. The ascendant was the astrological sign rising on the eastern horizon at the time of your birth. And so then the opposite point is the descendant of the sign that was setting at the time of your birth. And so with a Taurus descendant, it would be a desire and attraction for those Taurus energies in your world, in your life. The Taurus energies being patient, calm, focused, able to be stable and reliant. There's a consistency here. There's also a focus on resources and how to build a life that is not only resourceful, but that honors what you need, what you value. So the Taurus descendant is seeking out others with the same values, who have consistency, and who also can provide a stable framework for relationships and connections. Now you'll notice here that in this chart, this individual's sun is in Taurus as well. So clearly there is a natural sense of this is who I am, and I'm seeking out others with those same energies or values to pull into my life. Now, we're looking specifically at the descendant, but the planets in the seventh house play a role in how those relationships and connections really work for you. And when you have the sun in the seventh house, it brings up a life theme of relationships and learning about who you are through other people, really being invested in connections, in those personal people in your world that you can relate to, who show up. There's a desire to share. There can be a sense here of understanding more about relational dynamics. And with Mercury in the seventh, there's also a need for good conversation, intellectual stimulation, being able to talk about things regularly and daily with this Mercury in Gemini. And so this would be someone who has a natural affinity for relationships, and it's really emphasizing the Taurus themes, really needing someone who is on the same page, including the pace of life, how you move through life, how you grow through life. So here we have a chart where the descendant is the same as the sun sign. So there's a double emphasis here. And that sun being in the seventh house really needs to honor what is important to you in those connections, in relationships. And the Taurus energy doesn't budge, doesn't always want to change. And so there could be something here where you're really learning about yourself through growth and more about what needs to be honored both in self and in others for relationships to be successful, healthy, and satisfying. So to go further in this, Taurus is ruled by Venus. And so we would now look at Venus in the chart to understand more about how relationships are formed. Now keep in mind that the Taurus energy here is a bit like the gatekeeper into that seventh house. It's the energy that allows access or denies access into the seventh house, into connections and relationships. And so this Taurus energy is answering to Venus. And here she is in Aries in the fifth house. Now, Aries energy, Venus in Aries, is independent, wants to do her own thing, go her own way. She prefers to be on her own. And in the fifth house, this can certainly be around anything that you enjoy creating and doing. This relates to children. This relates to the areas of your life that perhaps need to be your own. And that's something that can show up with Venus in Aries is there can be a sense of, I want to do this on my own terms, in my own way. I don't want to share. So this adds more to the story, right? That this is someone who is naturally independent, who could be highly selective around the relationships they allow into their world. And they could even move through relational dynamics quickly, since that Aries energy is fast moving. It's sort of like meet someone Tuesday, they're gone by Friday. If they're boring, if they're not interesting, if they don't have enough going on in their world, because that Venus in Aries needs to be able to do her own thing. So then what we look at after we get more understanding around the Venus, right, which is the ruler of the descendant, is we look at the aspects to this Venus. And it turns out there is a lot. There's a lot here. So let's go through them. Now, Venus is at 9 degrees of Aries. So she actually has a square from Saturn, 2 degrees of Cancer, and a square from Mars at 13 degrees of Cancer. So the square here could result in being attracted to or pulling in people who embody more of these Cancer energies, which is a part of this person's energy. So there is the desire even to have more emotional depth, especially in the 8th house. But this Saturn in Cancer and this Mars in Cancer, neither of them are comfortable in Cancer. So there can be issues related to how this person was raised, the mother or the father energies here, being uncomfortable with their own emotional needs and not knowing how to bring them into connections to develop more intimacy and more self-awareness in the 8th house. Also, it could be drawing in people who are perhaps emotionally avoidant or who don't know how to have a healthy connection with their emotional world and their internal needs. Now, that would be one expression. The more evolved, mature development of these energies would be someone who gains clarity on what they need, and that's going to be at odds with what this Venus in Aries needs, which is independence, and typically the Cancer energy needs connection. So right away we have something set up here where there could be something they're moving through in relational dynamics around understanding their emotional needs while also needing to be on their own, be aware of what is true for them, and to honor this Aries energy. But I also notice how the Cancer energy is stronger here. So there is a desire for emotional connection, but it's going to be interesting how that shows up with the Saturn in Cancer here. This could mean that there is more healing required, meaning there could be things that this individual has been learning through their parents or the parental dynamics around what they need, what they don't need, what they received in early childhood, which is Cancer, what they didn't receive. This can also be big trust issues. The 8th house being about how we trust others with the truth of who we really are. So these two squares to Venus furthers the story. Then you'll notice over here, there's an opposition between Pluto at 4 degrees of Libra, and that brings up power dynamics. That brings up what we do or what we look to compromise in the world, and the 11th house being friendships, acquaintances. This could be someone who has had some difficult experiences with friendships where there's a lack of trust, and in fact there's a perception of power dynamics at play and an ability here to be all or nothing in relationships. There can certainly be, again, power dynamics, and this can be someone who's even learning about what it means to have healthy friendships, healthy connections, because Pluto opposing this Venus in Aries is going to bring up the perception of what needs to be fought for or understood. It can bring up the understanding of what needs to be, what someone needs to prove, almost like I need to prove to them that I'm valuable, that I'm worthy, that I'm a good friend. So there's some built-in power dynamics here that can show up through various means. And then this also means that Pluto is squaring Saturn. And so that is also an intense energy at play around the emotional needs and around trust. I mean, there's a big trust theme here. Then, we're not done yet, but the other aspects being made to the Venus involve this Neptune at 8 degrees of Sag, making a lovely trine, which is this is very creative energy. This is really trusting intuition, trusting what feels right, trusting what is true for you. And because it's in the first house of self, this is actually someone who might feel like they're better off on their own, and that they would kind of rather do things that move them, that inspire them, that lift their energy, and to trust that. So one thing that's coming clear here in this chart to me is that this individual could be very selective around who they draw in, who they are really friends with, who they interact with, because there could have been some really big lessons, some hard emotional things that have come up along the way. And there could be a sense of, well, I'm better off on my own. And then the final energy here to look at is this moon at 7 degrees of Aquarius sextiling this Venus, and the moon being our daily nature, our everyday self, what we enjoy doing. This is quite cerebral energy, especially in the third house. It is seeking out things to understand and to know. It trines this Gemini. So this is an energy too of independence, going your own way, and also being aware of what is best for your energy on a daily basis. I like how this moon at least trines Pluto in Libra and brings up some things that are very, it's a passionate focus. It's really doing a deep dive into something or someone or an interest, something that is enjoyable for the mind, but also emotionally satisfying in some way. And so with the moon sextiling Venus, this reiterates again that desire to do something for oneself and to be aware of what that is interesting. So overall, you can see how the story gets a lot bigger and more involved as you look at the ruling planet. Remember, we're talking about the descendant here. That's where we started. And so we follow this energy trail that shows us how the ruling planet of the descendant is influenced and impacted the energy signature. This Venus has a lot that she's working with. And it's interesting because going back to the qualities of Taurus prefers simplicity and calm. But this Venus is not that. This Venus is not that. And so this is where it can start to explain more about the people that we pull in. And when we see that the ruling planet of the descendant has a lot of interactions and aspects with other planets, this starts to help us understand that maybe, just maybe, some people who show up in her world embody various qualities stronger that she's working out through them to know her needs more, to know herself more. And that is one of the hallmarks of the descendant. The people we pull in, the people we work with, the people that we interact with who show us more about who we are. And because this person is a sun in Taurus, there's a lot more going on underneath the surface here. There's a lot more experiences they've had that has shaped and formed them. There's a lot more at play here around what they're learning about themselves through all these interactions, again, because of the sun in the 7th house of people we connect with and share our energy with. So this is why it's quite fascinating to follow the energy trail of the Descendant, because you start to understand more of relationships, and you also understand what parts of you are seeking expression, as well as even understanding more of your own needs through all these dynamics. And so I would guess that after we look at these connections with Venus, and yes, this Mercury does sextile Venus, and there is in fact a grand trine here in the air signs too, that this is someone who's very selective around who they will be in connections with, very selective around friendships and groups, perhaps has worked some things out through groups. And by groups, this can mean groups of people, teams, sports teams, fraternities, sororities, networks, people who have a common hobby, a common passion, soul tribe, soul group energies as well. So this is someone who wants relational energies in their lives, is designed to experience them, to understand themselves more, but it can be more complicated, and it can be something that they are learning about themselves, especially through all of these energies that are working with her ruling planet of Venus. So I hope this gives you more to chew on and look at in your own chart. I will be doing the Gemini Descendant next, and I'll share with you some more things to examine and look at through each of these chart videos that I do. So I'll see you back here for that next video soon.